Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Well, we'll start off talking about UK-Nigeria relations, and we've got His Excellency, Mr. Paul Arkwright, British High Commissioner to Nigeria. Good morning, and thank you for coming today.
It's great to be here.
Well, yes, we'll talk about this relations, but let's start with Brexit. I mean, that's big now. Almost everyone talking about it, and many are concerned. Yes, the Prime Minister has said that at least about March you get that kicking off, but you have many who wonder. Look, first and foremost, let's start to asking you, when she says March, what do we expect in practical terms?
Okay, well, March, what she has said is that by the end of March, the UK will start the negotiations. So we'll, in effect, press the start button. And there's something called Article 50. Article 50 is the article in the EU Constitution and the EU laws, rules, which will be triggered when we start the negotiations to leave the European Union. Until that point, until the end of March, and indeed during the process of the negotiations, the UK will stay in the European Union. All the benefits of being there, all the rules and regulations, etc., will remain. And then we'll see what happens at the end of those negotiations, which most people think will last perhaps around 2 years. So we're talking about quite a long time scale. It's a complicated series of negotiations, especially around the trade area. But you know what the Prime Minister said, Brexit means Brexit. There was a referendum, a democratic process, and the people of the United Kingdom chose to come out of the European Union. So that's the way it is, and that's where the government is. Taking, I must say, a very confident, optimistic outlook for the United Kingdom following the exit. But the negotiations obviously are an important part of that.
You know, I've also heard a number of people, including former UKIP leaders, say, look, why don't we do this earlier than March? What do you think about that?
I think, as I said, it's a very complex series of negotiations. It's not straightforward. We've been in the European Union for 4 decades. That's a long time. That's a lot of rules, a lot of regulations which we have taken into British law. We need to prepare ourselves properly, be ready for those negotiations, have the right people in place, discuss internally at the political level and then, of course, at the civil service level, exactly where we want to be at the end of those negotiations. So there's an internal process which goes on first. When that is complete, and the Prime Minister has said that will be complete by the end of March next year, then we start the negotiations with the European Union. So it's not straightforward. It's not as straightforward as some might think.
You know, what kind of negotiations are you looking to have in with the rest of the EU?
A lot of it, as I mentioned, is around trade. So up to now, the United Kingdom's trade relationships, external trade relationships, have been done through and with the European Union as a member of the European Union. So the European Union has negotiated trade relationships with a whole series of countries and other economic areas, regional areas, for many, many years. We need to pull out of those arrangements and organise our own separate bilateral trade relationships with each of these major countries. So that's one of the key areas. But, you know, the European Union and being a member of the European Union affects pretty much every aspect of life in the UK and for any member state of the European Union. So that's a whole series of quite complicated areas where we need to negotiate an exit.
All right, let's get Mark in on this one. Mark.
Well, very closely linked to that is the question of immigration, which I think the Prime Minister did try to address yesterday, talking about cracking down on immigration, which is something that, a lot of foreigners will be looking to see how that is handled. Nigeria, for one, will be watching to see how that is handled, considering that, a lot of Nigerians usually go to the UK. How do you think that's going to pan out for a lot of Nigerians who are looking to either come to the UK or who have loved ones in the UK?
Yeah, well, thank you. It's a good question, and I know that is a concern here in Nigeria. I've myself have had that question posed to me before. I mentioned earlier that the UK is not pulling out of the European Union for some time yet. We're still in the European Union. The existing rules and regulations obviously still apply there. They apply to a large extent to European nationals of European Union countries, and that will be part of the negotiation. When it comes to the arrangements for Nigerians and non-EU citizens, certainly at the moment nothing has changed. So We have a visa regime, which you're well aware of. Nigerians need to apply for a visa in the usual way, online and so on. I've always said that it's important that any Nigerian who wants to come to the United Kingdom, and by the way, Nigerians are very welcome in the United Kingdom, needs to make sure they have all the processes right, they apply online, they have all the documentation, etc. That has not changed. And that's an important message, I think, for your viewers, that when it comes to immigration into the UK, we haven't changed any rules. Now, I can't predict at this stage what that's going to look like further down the line. There have been issues, as you know, and it's been in the press here, about some Nigerians, and a very small minority of Nigerians, who have overstayed their visa and stayed longer in the United Kingdom than is allowed. In effect, they have broken our rules. They have recourse to legal remedy, to legal avenues and so on. When that has been exhausted, then, and if their appeals have failed, then of course they will be returned to Nigeria. So that's part of a fair and robust immigration system, which any country, including Nigeria, has, and rules are in place. So my main message is nothing has changed, but stick to the rules.
We're not done yet with the Brexit, and the question next will be for the UK passport holders. How will they then be dealing with the rest of the EU if they decide to travel just the way a Nigerian would want to go to the United Kingdom? Will they be needing a visa to visit the EU henceforth?
Well, remember the United Kingdom is not currently part of the so-called Schengen area. Okay, so you would need that anyway, because as we're not part of the Schengen area, you would need a separate visa to get into the Schengen area. And once you're in the Schengen area, you can move more freely within that. But the United Kingdom is outside the Schengen area, which means that nothing has changed. So for that, that hasn't changed. But again, part of this discussion, negotiation over the next 2.5 years will involve that kind of relationship for UK passport holders travelling to Europe. At the moment, that's still the case. It's still the same situation. For Nigerian passport holders, they will need a separate visa to go to Schengen countries. For UK passport holders, travel is still free as it was in the past, and will remain so until we actually leave the European Union.
When that announcement was made initially, the financial world reacted. But now that when the PM announced the March date, it also reacted, I think, about the lowest in 31 years. Does this mean that Brexit means there will be more reactions with the pound sterling?
You're talking about the pound. I mean, actually, interestingly, the stock market, the FTSE 100 index, actually went to its highest level for quite some time after that announcement. So the stock market was very buoyant. You're right, the pound, as a result of the Brexit result, and since then, has been at a lower level than it was before that. That's not necessarily a bad thing. The currency does mean that it is easier for British companies to export. It's cheaper for importing countries to buy British goods. A weaker pound is not necessarily a bad thing, and it does make it more expensive for British people travelling to the US or Europe and so on. But I don't think it's a sign of a weaker economy. If you look at the basis and the fundamentals of the British economy, I think you'll see that they're very strong. And I think Nigerians who know the UK well, people who do business in the UK, are not panicking. Those people that I know very well who do daily business in the UK understand that the UK, as a proud and soon to be very independent country, still has some really strong, attractive features to it when it comes to doing business. So we're confident, the government's confident, I'm personally confident that when we come out of the European Union, eventually after this negotiation, that those fundamentals won't change and Britain will remain a really strong and good and profitable place to do business.